Welcome to Motherhood at its Finest, where we talk about how the endless love, laughter, chaos, challenges, and sometimes even heartbreak of motherhood intertwine. Whether you're an expectant mother with no idea what to expect, a new mom trying to navigate their way through the trenches for the first time, or a seasoned mama with years of experience, we're thrilled to have you join us on this journey. This podcast is your safe haven, 100% judgment-free space where we celebrate the joys, share the struggles, and empower each other as we explore the unpredictable and ever-evolving world of motherhood. So whether you're on the move with your kiddos or able to settle in your comfiest spot with your favorite drink, get ready to indulge in relatable stories, valuable insights, and plenty of laughter one episode at a time. On that note, welcome to our side of the hood, motherhood. Let's dive in, mamas. Welcome back, everyone. We are doing our third episode. If you have been listening, we really appreciate it. If this is your first one, we still are so excited to have you with us. Today, we are going to go over some kind of hard topics. So this is kind of a trigger warning for those that are sensitive to miscarriage or
Infertility.
any infertility, stillbirth, anything like that. We're going to be kind of talking about some of those topics. So if you're not quite ready to listen to those kind of things, go ahead and wait until next week, and we'll have a more kind of lively, fun episode. But these are some topics that need to be talked about.
Yes.
Because they are still a little bit, I don't know, like taboo, or like people don't really like to talk about them, even though it is so common, unfortunately.
Yes.
So we are going to talk about that today. If you want to join us, we're glad to have you. If not, we will see you next week.
Yeah, so I guess we can just dive into it. This is
I'm gonna kind of let you
gonna...
take the reins on this one. Or for sport.
So I don't know how many of our listeners know the statistics from like infertility and miscarriage. Miscarriage is 1 in 4 women suffer miscarriages, which is doesn't seem like a big number, but it's a huge number.
25% of all. And you know how many people give birth every day? Every couple seconds.
Yeah,
it's 25% of all of those people.
Yeah, so it's kind of it's up there. And then the number of unknown infertility issues, which is what Paul and I dealt with in the past, is I believe 10%. I hope that's accurate. I can't remember. But the reason why we know that is because Paul and I actually had some infertility issues in the past before we had Eli. So I'm going to kind of share my story. I'm like nervous doing this one, but I feel like I have to share my story for those women that have gone through similar situations. And I just don't want anybody to feel alone or feel like you're the only one going through something this tough. So I guess I'll start. So when Paul and I were first married, I mean, even when we were dating, I remember like the day of our wedding reception, we were doing, like the first dance, and we were kind of talking, and he's like, well, what now? He's like, I'm like, I don't know. He's like, I guess it's off to making babies, so that was,
of course,
let's start a family, because it's something that we both had always talked about, that we wanted families. Like we said in the previous episode, he comes from a big family, and I have 3 other siblings, and they all have children. So that was like the first thing on our minds was like, okay, we have a plan. So we lived with my brother in my brother's house for the first little bit of our, when he moved back to Utah, because he was living in Virginia at the time that we started dating. So we dated long distance, and I actually flew out to Virginia, and we drove back to Utah. That was the longest drive of my life. 32 hours. And my thought was like, okay, if I can spend 32 hours in the car with this man,
I can marry him.
I got it. It's easy. So yeah, we traveled all the way back, and then like I said, we lived with my brother for a little bit once he got a job and we were back on our feet and everything. We then moved into an apartment, and we said, okay, we sat down and we were like, this is what our plan is. We had a 1-year lease, and we're like, okay, we are going to bust our butts for a year, and we're going to save up, and we're going to buy a house, and then we're going to start our family, because we didn't want to go into, not that it's bad at all and there's no judgment, but we wanted to be secure, and we wanted to have a financial,
you want to be like financially stable.
Yeah, financially stable. Before we brought a child into this world, we know what struggle looks like on both sides of like our families, and so we didn't want our child to have to go through too many hardships. So we wanted to wait until we were financially stable and we were mentally mature to start a family. And so we waited a little bit. And once our lease was up, I then moved into my parents' house for a couple of months, because then at the time Paul was traveling a lot for work. And so that was kind of like the price that we had to pay in order for us to be able to have that financial stability. Was, okay, well, if you have to go away for work for 3 weeks at a time and I stay home and run the barber shop, this is what we have to do, and just sacrifice a little bit of our personal space and live with my parents for a couple of months. So he was away while we were house shopping. So my mom would come and look at houses with me. I don't know if you came the first time to look at a couple homes with
me. I came and saw a couple, but then I was working all the time.
You were working all the time.
I was doing the DNA thing.
Yeah. So I don't miss those either. I missed you a lot when you were working so much.
Didn't leave my house.
Yeah. So we saved up. We purchased our first home, and then gosh, I can't even remember. I think it was right around the same time that I got pregnant with Elias that I found out I was pregnant with Santi. I feel like it was right over. I feel like I tried to push a lot of that like stuff to like the back of my memory, because I don't want
compartmentalize.
Yes. So like I said, we wanted to start a family, and so I found out I was pregnant. And I think I was like between 7 and 8 weeks along. So I was getting there up to like the double digits. And I was so excited to tell everybody. I had told my sister that I was pregnant. I told you, and I had Paul was at work, and I organized this like scavenger hunt in our house. I was like, okay, now go to the back of the TV and whatnot. So the last part of it was he was going to call our dogs up, and each dog, we had Nala back then and our dog Athena. So I put the pregnancy test in their collars, and I was like, you have to call the dogs up. And so they come up, and there was something written on there, and I was like, and it said like baby Quintero coming June 2020. And so yeah, we were super excited. We were like planning on how we were going to tell our parents. We were going to wait a little bit longer to tell our parents. And I can't, like you said, I tried to kind of forget it, kind of just like push it away. But I think Paul was actually at work, and it was early morning, and I start feeling like these cramps. So I'm just kind of laying in bed, and I'm like, this is weird. The day before that, actually, I was feeling really, really tired. Had a long day at the barber shop, and
I remember that because you came home like during lunch, and you were like, I slept. I didn't go back.
Yeah, I didn't go back to work. I just was feeling so sick, so I left. And Paul knows that I like flowers, but I'm like, they're gonna die. Like, don't get me flowers.
Give me an edible arrangement.
Yeah, something. And not that I'm saying that I don't like them. I do like them, but sometimes I'm like, don't spend that much money on flowers. We're just gonna, So he had actually come home with flowers that night, because I was like, I don't feel good. So he came home with a bouquet of flowers, and I kind of just sat around, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to bed. And then the next morning, I go to the bathroom because I was already feeling kind of uncomfortable. And so when I do go to the bathroom, I'm like cleaning myself up, and I see on the tissue, because I had heard stories of like people like miscarrying, and I was like, I would always check
to
make sure that there was nothing there. And when I do wipe, I see a little bit of pink. And so I was like, okay, I think this is normal. And so I call my sister. I was like, is this? She's like, yeah, things are just kind of moving, and it's baby's like, kind of growing, and yeah. So things are moving around. Everything's stretching, so it's normal. And I was like, well, I'm feeling a little bit of back pain. And she's like, yeah, it's just your body's going through a lot of changes, so you're going to be okay. And so as I start going to the bathroom, it starts getting heavier and darker. And so I was telling Paul, I'm like, this isn't normal. So Paul's older sister actually works at a women's center. So she specializes working with women. And so I was kind of like, I messaged her and I was like, hey, this is what's going on. And she had me keep an eye on things. She's like, if you soak through a pad, then you have to go to an emergency room, or we have to, talk to your OB. I was like, I don't have an assigned OB yet. Like my next appointment isn't until I'm 12 weeks. Because I had gone to the clinic before and they did like the urine sample and everything. And they're like, you were so pregnant. Like the lady's like, that thing lit up, so you were pregnant. And I waited like another couple of hours and another day. And then I messaged my old bishop, who is an OB and delivers babies. And so I was telling him kind of like everything that was going on. He's like, go to the clinic and they will be able to see you there and they'll give you an ultrasound. And so he was asking me all these questions, how I was feeling and if I had had an ultrasound yet. And I was like, no, like nothing. And this is all new to me. I don't know what the steps are to, okay, I'm pregnant, first time being pregnant. Like, what's my next step? I didn't know that that was like such a long period of time between when I was told I was pregnant to my first appointment. And so we get to the clinic and I'm like crying because Paul comes with me. I'm like, this isn't normal. Something's going up, and it's early in the morning.
Had a feeling.
Yeah, and he left work, and we were talking to the ladies at the front desk, and they were just like so careless. Like, well, we don't know if we can get you in. We don't know if anybody's going to be able to see you today. I'm like, I am bleeding. I'm pregnant. Something is obviously wrong. I couldn't even talk. I was like, will you just give them all my personal information? Because I was so worried about what was going on with my body. And I ended up messaging the doctor again. And I was like, hey, they're not seeing me. They don't think they can see me today. He's like, just wait right there. I'm done with my rounds at the hospital. I'm on my way to the clinic. I will make sure that you get a test and that we do an ultrasound. Whew. And he gets to the clinic and they call us back and they start doing like the blood work. They're like, we just need to make sure that your hormones are still at a good level. And he's like, well, your urine sample is normal. We're waiting on the blood work, but in the meantime, we're going to move you to do an ultrasound. And Paul's holding my hand and he has the ultrasound tech do it. And he's struggling. He's struggling to find a heartbeat. He's struggling. He can't do anything. And thank you. And the moment that the doctor takes over, who is a really good family friend, that's when I know that something's not okay. And I just feel Paul's hands getting tighter and tighter, like holding mine as tight as possible. And we're both like looking at the ultrasound machine, like hoping that something will come up or something by like a miracle will show up on the screen. And he couldn't even get the words out. And he's like, I am so sorry. He's like, but there's nothing there. I can't find anything. And I know like how hard that was for him because he was a family friend and he watched me and my siblings grow up, and there was a really good relationship there with his kids. And I almost felt guilty for putting him in that situation of having to tell me. And I was in such denial still. Like, I still was like, "Are you sure? Like, you can't find anything? Is there any, like, I haven't soaked through a pad. Like, there's got to be something else." And we, he takes us out and he's like, "The best thing I can do is tell you to go home and come back tomorrow when I have your blood work back." And so we go home, and that was the longest day of my life. I would keep going to the bathroom and notice that things were just getting, they went from bad to worse in like a matter of hours. And I remember Paul had come home from work after his shift was over, because I was like, "Just go to work." I just kind of wanted to deal with it by myself. And so he was in the backyard just working. I think he was also trying to keep his mind off of things. And I just opened the door, and he looks at me and he's like, "What's wrong?" I'm like, "Everything is wrong." And I literally, like, I collapsed to the floor. Like, I couldn't deal with what the pain of losing a baby, of like the things that were happening to my body. And he like literally picked me up off the floor. He's like, "We're going to be okay. Like, everything's going to be fine." And he knew that things were okay, but somebody had to keep it together for both of us. And he carries me and we sit on the couch, and he's like, "We're going to be fine. We're going to be okay." And so we go back to the clinic the next day, and he's like, "Well, your hormone levels have dropped in half." And he's like, "I'm sorry to tell you, but you're no longer pregnant." And I was like, okay, still in denial, still being like, "No, there's got to be something, has to be okay." And I was like, "Is there any way you can request like an official ultrasound? I want to make sure that maybe you missed something, like you can." And him being a father to a, he has a daughter. He's like, "Yes." He's like, "I will send an ultrasound to the hospital." And immediately the next day we were there. And I was like, "Mom, will you please come with me?" And I was just like up and standing, walking around while we were in the waiting area. But before that, I just kind of felt like the world was just like coming, like crushing down around me. Because on our way to the freaking hospital in Layton, we're at the stoplight and our truck completely dies on us. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, we're in the middle of traffic. There's people honking at us. My husband's in the middle of the freaking intersection trying to figure out what's wrong with our car." So he somehow gets it to start. And we drive down to the hospital, which we were literally like right there. We were late for the appointment. I'm like, "Please don't like cancel my appointment. I need to know." And so they do an ultrasound, and the same thing is, she's like, I'm sorry to tell you, I regret to tell you that you lost your baby." And she's like, "But if you look here, there's a bunch of like little eggs." She's like, "So you don't have to worry about getting pregnant again. Everything is perfectly normal." So we went back home, and the next, like, I swear, like, year was the hardest year of my life. Like, I would just sit in bed and I would like wonder like what life would be like with our baby, or like who he would look like and how he would be. And it was such a hard time in our lives, and I wish that like somebody that had gone through it would have talked to me about it. Somebody, I wish that I would have a little bit of support. And as I started talking to my mom about it, and as I would talk to my mother-in-law, they had both had miscarriages, and I didn't know that. They had both lost babies, and I'm like, why is this something that we don't talk about? If we have daughters at home, this can be a possibility. It's like 1 in every 4 women. Why is this a topic that's so taboo that we can't just kind of let people know, like, hey, it doesn't always happen.
Yeah.
It doesn't always go full term.
Mm-hmm.
There's people that lose their babies at 5 weeks, at 13 weeks, at, have stillbirths. And this is still something that we don't talk about amongst each other as women or as moms. Like, has to be talked about. And so I remember coming home from the hospital that night, and there was a bouquet of yellow roses at my door. I think it was a couple of days later. I had to come home from work, and one of my friends said, "Hey, I just wanted to stop by and drop a little bit of sunshine at your door." And so I walk up to the front door, and it's just a bouquet of yellow roses. Shout out to Yvette. She was a rock for me when I needed a friend. And I feel like I closed myself off to a lot of people, and I feel like you were one of those people that I kind of shut out for a bit.
And it was hard because, like, when you told me, I didn't know what to do. Like, I couldn't make it better, and there's been so many times where, like, we've gone through heartbreak and, like, we've been able to be there for each other, and we kind of knew what to do and what to say. And when you told me, and, like, because when you told me, you just, like, collapsed in my arms and you just cried, and there was nothing I could do, and I was in shock too, because, like, I was
You
also
were waiting,
excited,
yeah.
I was excited too, and, like, I was preparing to, like, have my best friend have a baby too, so I was like, but I didn't want to sound selfish and be like, yeah, like,
I was excited
I'm
too.
like struggling too,
Yeah.
like, I don't know what to say, like, because when you haven't been through something like that, even when you have, I feel like there's nothing you can say to a mom to make it better.
Right.
So I was like, the only thing I can really do is just, like, be here. But then later on, you voiced to me that, like, you didn't want to, like, be a burden, and that was so hard. I was like, you will never, be a burden, especially with, like, in this kind of situation. It's like, I've never, like, had kids or, like, been a mom, like, so I don't, like, understand, because that's what you were telling me before, is that you're like, I already felt like a mom, like, I lost a child, and, like, so it was hard for me to, like, understand, like, that kind of love that, like, I understand now that I'm a mom. Like, I can't even imagine, and so when you were going through that, I didn't know how to help. And when I asked you, like, what can I do, and you just straight told me, there's nothing you can.
Nothing.
And so it was like, okay, well, like, all I can do is check on you. Like, so I would check on you, but that was, like, all that I could do, because I didn't want to, like, smother you and, like, make you talk about it, because I knew it was so
hard
and so fresh that I was like, well, if she's having a good day, like, not thinking about it, I don't want to, like, text you and be like, hey, how are you feeling today about it? And be like, bitch, like, I wasn't thinking about it for 2 seconds,
And I remember that you actually made a cute little,
for his birthday.
Yeah, for his birthday you made.
It's like a little stepping stone thing, and I wrote his
name on it. Yeah,
and a big old S.
Yeah.
Something.
I remember that. It's really pretty. I have it put away, actually. I don't want it to break anywhere, so I'm just like, this is special to me, so I don't put it out.
Yeah, I was like, I did not know how to help, and that was the hardest thing, because I was like, I don't want to make it worse by trying to make it better, because I know there's nothing I can do to make it better.
Yeah.
But the crazy thing is, like, after like after some time had passed, you were able to tell me, like, what you needed in that time, where you're like, I just needed somebody to be there. I didn't need somebody to try and fix. I didn't need somebody to try and help me. Because that's like, that's what I like when people are struggling, when my people are struggling, I'm like, I need to help.
You're a fixer.
I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, when I don't know what to do, I shut down because I'm like, I don't want to make it worse, but because I don't know what to do, you know.
Yeah.
But after like you had talked to me more about it, when other friends I knew had gone through it, I was able to kind of like reach out to them in a way that I was like, okay, this is what like MJ said she needed when she went through this. And like, that's why I think it's so important that we talk about it.
Yeah.
Especially like on here, is because more than likely you're going to know somebody that has either gone through it or goes through it in the future, unfortunately. So talking about it more not only helps those women that go through it know that they're not alone, but also it helps other women support those women that go through it.
Yeah, and I think it was really, like you said, you didn't know how to help. My mom didn't know whether she could ask me about it or talk about it. My sister also didn't know whether she could ask how I was doing or how I was feeling. It was really hard for me because in the same time that Santi's was supposed to be born, like his birthday, my sister-in-law, she had also found out she was pregnant. And so I was like, cool. She's pregnant, you know, like it was hard for me to be happy because I wasn't pregnant yet. I hadn't found out. And I found out like 2 weeks later that I was pregnant with Santi. And I was like, okay, now I feel like a jerk for being like, oh yay, she's pregnant again, you know. And then my other sister-in-law also found out she was pregnant. So it was hard. It was hard for me to see like two of the people that are close to us that were pregnant. And so my little brother invited us to when they had revealed that they were pregnant to both sides of the family. And it was hard for me to sit there and kind of like smile. And I was like, that's, you know, because I've been yearning for something for so long and it still hadn't happened. And I felt very, like, looking back on that, it was very, very selfish of me not to be happy for her. But at the time, I was like, well, that's cool. Somebody else around me is pregnant, and I guess I'll just have to wait my turn again. And so when she found out she was pregnant, as time went on, it was still really fresh for me after I had my miscarriage. And I think Paul was actually out of town, and I was just at home feeling like a piece of shit. Literally, like I was so in my head. I'm pretty sure I went through some depression that I never wanted to admit
I'm
to
sure
myself that that's what was going on.
Because your body still goes through those hormonal changes, just like if you did give birth, you know, like same thing, like postpartum depression. The hormones are the same.
Yeah, there were still things that were coming out of my body that I'm like, was that it? You know, like, was that my baby? Like, there was just things that were happening to me that I wasn't sure. So I was constantly on my phone with Paul's sister being like, hey, this is what happened. She's like, this is normal. I'm sorry that you have to go through it, because she sees it on a daily basis. And that's finally when I called my sister. I messaged her and I said, hey, she's like, hi, are you okay? And I was like, no, actually, I'm not. And I think I just word vomited everything over a text message. And I was like, I just feel like you guys dismissed my feelings. I feel like you guys saw me go through something so hard and you guys didn't even care. Like, you just kind of swept it under the rug. You've never asked me how I'm doing. You've never, like, you know, like, I feel like it was just dismissed. Like, you checked on me for a minute and then it was like kind of went away. And she tried calling me and I didn't answer, but at that time I was driving to my mom's house and she's like, where are you? I was like, I'm going to go to mom's. I don't want to be alone. And it was like 10 o'clock at night. For some reason, my mom was still talking to somebody on the phone, and I just go and I like curl up in like fetal position. I'm just sitting there like crying in my mom's arms while she's on the phone. I'm pretty sure she's talking to my grandma, and so she hangs up and she's like rubbing my hair, like just trying to comfort me. And she's like, "Is everything okay? Like, are you and Paul okay? You know that whatever you need, we're here for you." And then my sister walks in the door, and I'm like, "What are you doing here?" You know, like I did not expect her to walk in the door. She has two little babies at home, and I'm pretty sure she was like, "My sister needs me, and I have to go."
Yeah.
And so she left her kids with her husband, and she was also crying. She's like, "Can I tell mom what you told me?" I'm like, "I can't tell her, you can." And so she said she just feels like we didn't care and we just dismissed her feelings because we haven't asked how she was doing. And mom's like, she's like, "It's not that I didn't care or that we dismiss your feelings." She's like, "I just never knew how to ask. I never knew if I could ask because it was so fresh and it was so new."
Yeah.
But I was so angry at both of them because I was like, "You being moms, you guys could have asked." But at the same time, my sister had never gone through it. You know, she's never had an experience like this before. So I couldn't hold it against her. And as time has gone on, I now realize that I was angry at the situation. I wasn't mad at either of them because they were there checking on me constantly. And I actually remember because it took me a really long time to get over it, and sometimes I still think about it and it makes me sad. But I remember a couple of days later, my sister and her husband, I think they purposely did it just to get me out of my house, but it was cold outside and they brought their babies and they're like, "Hey, we're gonna go to Farmington Station and just to walk and get out and get some fresh air. Do you want to come with us?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll come with you." And just watching my nieces and nephews like play with each other, it took my mind off of so many things. Like Paul was away for work. I was at home by myself. She's like, we got to do something. So she grabbed her kids and Enoch, my oldest nephew. She's like, "We're going." And we just danced in front of the like water feature there and we just walked around and it got my mind off of things for a while. And it just makes me, now that I think about it, it makes me appreciate her so much more because as a sister who had never gone through that, she was trying her best with the knowledge that she had because we only know what we know. Like in the Hispanic culture, we don't talk about stuff like this. We don't talk about hardships. We don't talk like this is so private, like we don't talk about things that we go through. And so when I did vocalize it and I let people know, like people were so sympathetic that I hadn't told anybody, and um I would post things like on Instagram here and there, but there's so many times where I just like it was like literally some of the darkest moments where I was like, what do I do? Like what's next for me? So it was really hard. So after like once I posted about it and came out and started talking about it, it was incredible the amount of messages that I would get saying, "I am with you. I know how you feel. This has happened to me before." And that's why I've since that's happened to me, I always I vocalize it. I talk about it because I don't want people to feel alone. I don't want people to feel like they don't have somebody in their corner, somebody that has gone through it because more than likely you are going to somebody's that has gone through it, you know. So it was really 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 cool to have like that support of that many women. And once my mom had told me that she had had a miscarriage, I'm like, why didn't you tell me? Like this would have been so much easier. Like I would have been able to be able to talk to you about it. But again, we come from a culture where we don't talk about it. So I don't know if she didn't feel comfortable saying something before the fact, or like once it had happened to me, she could relate those feelings. But it was really rough, and she actually didn't tell me that. My dad was the one that told me. She's like, Mom went through that. I was like, why didn't you guys tell me? It would have been like a conversation that really could have helped, or maybe even speed up the healing process. But at the same time, like, we all mourn differently. And from the moment that I found out I was pregnant to when I lost my baby, I immediately was like, I am a mom and nobody can take that away from me. And it took me, I almost felt like imposter syndrome for a little bit, because I was like, wait, how can I call myself a mom if I don't physically have a child here?
Yeah.
If I don't have a baby to physically hold? And I kind of had to like talk to myself about it. Like, you are a mom. Like, you carried life in your womb for who cares how long.
I remember having that conversation with you, because you were like, I know, because I would tell you, I'm like, you're a mom. Like, I like, no matter what, you're a mom. And you told me, you're like, you're like, there's days where I feel like a mom, and there's days where I don't feel like I can call myself a mom. And I was like, don't even go there. I was like, and that's the hard part, because I was like, I don't know, like, because when you would say things, I'm like, how can you think that? How can you think that? You went through one of the biggest traumas. Like, there was one time where you were like, I don't know why I still think about it. I don't know why I'm not better already. And
because it had been a year, and
I was like,
still,
girl, I was like, you're not gonna be over it probably ever. Like,
you lost a baby.
Yeah,
you lost
it might get easier.
Yeah.
Might get easier. But I was like, I don't think you're ever supposed to be over it. Now, that was a significant part of your life.
Yeah, and I also felt, though, like it was almost like I had to get over it, because that's what was expected of me. Was, okay, cool, you went through this, stop talking about it, get over it. This was my kid.
Yeah.
This was my child. So I mean, until this day, I think about him every single day. I'm like, holy, when Elias's birthday comes around, I'm like, babe, we would have 2 kids. Like, Santi would be 3. Elias is like, it's just like, I think about it still all the time.
You guys still do balloons. I remember the first year that we did balloons.
Yeah.
And I got the most amazing picture of you guys.
You
remember,
did.
with like the sun in the background. I was like, look at what I got. I'm like crying showing you this picture.
Yeah. And it's crazy, because every year on his birthday, it rains, and I'm like,
then all of a sudden it gets,
it clears up when I go pick up balloons. I'm like, whether it rains or shines, we are gonna send balloons to heaven. So we do it every single year. But it was, when we came up with his name, I was like, we need to name him something Mexican but also Spanish. And I knew that I wanted Santiago from the get-go. But in the midst of like us, like Paul and I getting married, my cousin, who was more like a brother, dies. So when we found out we were pregnant, I'm like, his name is Santiago Francisco Quintero. Like, I wanted to make sure that I honored him in a certain way. So Santi was due June 8th. Paul's birthday is June 28th. And Elias's birthday is August 8th. So all my boys have infinity numbers in their birthdays, and I feel like it's something special. I don't know what it is, but those are my angel numbers. I know that 888 doesn't exist on the on the clock, because every time I look at my phone there's an angel number, but there's something meaningful about 8s in my life. So I think that's really cool. But fast forward to his first birthday, like you said, my parents came, my sister was there, you were there, my brother-in-law, and we released balloons, and we all kind of wrote a little note, and we said happy birthday, and it was really emotional. It was very, very emotional, because we were celebrating somebody that wasn't here, but I know that lives in heaven. So it was really cool. And I actually have we call him Santi Bear. And every time I see the color yellow, it reminds me of sunshine, the little bit of sunshine that Yvette left at my door in like the darkest moment of my life. And so I always relate those colors together. So I'm like, yellow, Santi, like sunshine. And so I made it out of like one of his onesies that we were already buying baby clothes in. So whoops. Yeah, so it just kind of sits with the rest of Elias's toys just to have a little bit of his brother here in his playroom.
Always watching over him.
Always. But yeah, and then we fast forward, we're trying to get pregnant. We don't know what's going on with my body. Like, I always think, I'm like, maybe it's from the trauma that my body went through, still kind of trying to heal from my miscarriage, or did I do something to my body that, is that it's not allowing me to carry, like a child? And so I would talk about it with certain friends, and my friend Tiffany actually, when his birthday came around, she sent me this really cool, I think it was a video that talks about how when you get pregnant, your DNA changes, like changes completely. And so there's always going to be a little bit of your child left in you. So I'm pretty sure you know more about that.
Well, like, because that's when then they take your blood and they're able to tell, like, if it's a boy or a girl, because their DNA is
like it changes
with you.
Yeah,
like it's in you. They've even said that like it changes like brain cells and everything once you've like become pregnant. And I read this because I went into a deep dive of like research when you miscarried, because I was like, I don't know how to help her, so I just need to know everything about miscarriage, like what I can say to her, like
you would do that
as like a scientific level, like how much of a mom she is, because like
I have to tell her she needs to know.
Like she needs to know the facts, because like you can. That's how I think. I'm like, yeah, you can feel as much as like you want, but like when there's like hard facts, like scientific proof, like you have to believe it,
Yeah. So yeah, she sent me this short clip, and I was like, you have no idea what you have just done for me. Like, it's just those tiny little things of like checking up on your friends and, small things like that. But yeah, we went to specialist, TMI, and Paul's probably gonna kill me. But we found a doctor by accident. So Dr. Vey, who I love her. She was incredible. So we somehow were sent to her office, and she's like, oh no, that's not what we do here. We'll send you to the clinic where so they were gonna check my tubes to make sure that they weren't clogged, where they put the dye in your tubes. That hurts. Nobody tells you all the things that they're gonna do to you when think you're not fertile, or when you can't have babies, when you're having infertility issues. Like from beginning to end, it's painful because you're trying to figure out what's going on with your body. So we go get that test done. We come back. She's like, just have them send the test back into my office. So we went to her office by mistake. Like, I don't even know how it happened, but she was God sent, and I love her. And they're like, well, everything comes back normal in your test. We don't really know what's going on, but now we have to check your husband to make sure everything's working well on his end. So they send us home with a tiny little cup. And so here's Paul with his little kids walking back into the hospital. He's like, here's this. So he just puts
here's my sample.
Here's my sample, take it. And so we get the results back, and he's like, for a minute, I think he's like, it's me. And we get those results back, and they're like, you guys are perfectly normal. And unfortunately, you're just falling into the unknown infertility percentage of the people that can't have children, and we just don't know why. And that's when we kept trying. I had been off birth control already for like almost 3 years at that point, and I still wasn't getting pregnant. And so then we find out we're pregnant with Elias, and we just told the world, because we were like, if heaven forbid anything happens again, we need the support of the entire planet, because I can't do this again.
Yeah.
So unknowingly, I had a high risk pregnancy, because after he was born, I was diagnosed with lupus.
Well, even before that, didn't they tell you that he only had the
single, and everything that could have been scary in my pregnancy was a little scary.
Yeah.
So we went to the ER a couple of times, because I think I was like 5 months along and I started spotting, and then I was bleeding, and I was like, nope, I am not doing this.
Yeah.
We are going straight to the ER. We're not going to see no clinic. We're going straight there. And we did, and it was just, I can't remember the technical term for it, but it was when little like blood bubbles like develop in your abdomen, and so they're just kind of, they dissolve and they just come out on their own.
Is it like, I can't remember
like, exactly what they're called. You guys that are listening,
I remember, I was like, oh yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, I can't remember what it was, but yeah, we went in and we got checked, and it was always so nerve-wracking when we went in for an ultrasound or anything like that, because it was like, are we going to hear anything? Like I had so much PTSD from my last pregnancy that it was almost not even enjoyable when we would go make sure that everything was okay with the baby, because I was so afraid of what they were going to say. I almost didn't even want to hear it.
Yeah.
And so Paul was at every appointment, which was amazing. He took as much time as he could, and if he couldn't, he always made sure that my mom was going or somebody was there with me. And so at our 21-week scan, where they do the genetic ultrasound, the technician, she's like, yeah, everything looks good. Nah, I'm gonna go get the doctor.
Right.
And I looked at him and I was like,
I hate that. Like when they're like,
nurses,
they like pause.
Be nice. Yeah.
They like pause and like, let me go get the doctor real quick. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
What does that mean? Don't leave this room right now.
Why
with
are you
me?
leaving?
Yeah, I'm like,
yeah. Wait. So she grabs the doctor. He comes back and he's like, well, your baby has a single umbilical artery. And I'm like, what does that mean? Like, well, they tell you the possible scenarios that could cause birth defects. It could be X, Y, and Z, and this and that. Oh, yeah. And by the way, your baby's breached. Okay. So cool. They're like, okay, well, you have to come back again so we can do the genetic testing. So he just developed one artery. He didn't develop two umbilical arteries, which it could cause a lot of scary things. But then
it's actually pretty common, though.
I did not know that. Yeah. They make it seem like it's so like the weirdest thing in the world.
Yeah, because I remember you called me after that and you're like, what is this? And I started looking it up and stuff, and I was like, well,
Mandy was my doctor outside of my doctor's office.
And I would deep dive for a couple hours, send her all these papers and be like, listen, like, look at the statistics. Like, it's very normal. Like, a majority of the time, babies are completely fine.
Yeah.
And so, like, I always had to be like, and that's the only way I know how to, like, help people is, like, with my brain. Like, I don't have anything else going for me.
With your book smarts.
Yeah, I have nothing else to, like, offer.
Yeah, so I called you. I told my mom, she's like, it's gonna be fine. My mom was actually with us at our scan, and she's like, baby, she's like, everything's gonna be okay. Your baby's fine. Like, he's gonna grow. He's gonna be okay. And then they're like, he's measuring a little small. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay. And so we come back. They're like, yep, it's the single umbilical artery. We're trying to see his face. He would not let us see his face. I'm like, okay, well, whatever. As long as he's fine, I don't even care. And so I can't remember. I think it was like 4 weeks before he was born. My doctor was like, hey, if this baby doesn't turn, our conversation is going to be totally different when you come back next time, because he's breached. So he was breached my entire pregnancy.
Yeah. He's like a little Buddha.
Yeah. And until this day, he still sleeps like this with his legs crossed. It's the funniest thing ever. But yeah, it was really nice when we had him here, and it was safe. Mm-hmm. Like, and I could hold him, and I'm like, okay, you're okay. Yeah. But now that he was out of my belly, I'm like, am I going to be able to keep him safe?
That is the worst feeling. I had that same feeling when I had Leo. I'm like, holy crap.
He's out.
go back in. Like, I could protect you in there, but out here, there's so many variables.
There's too many things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just hope that people take away from this is that you're not alone and you're not the only one that has ever gone through a hard situation like that. And I understand you and my heart is with you and I feel your pain, because as much as you don't want it to be painful, or even when you think about it, or when you see your children now, to think about like, well, what would he look like?
Yeah.
One really cool thing before I got pregnant with Elias, my mom would always say, "It's gonna happen. I promise it's coming. Like it's going to happen for you." And I had never told my mom about the color yellow. I had dreams about him before, but he didn't have curly hair how Elias has. He has hair like Paul, so it's more straight and really dark. And he's never wearing a shirt. He's always wearing shorts and barefoot. Like never wearing a shirt. He's always wearing shorts and he's always barefoot and he's always in a garden. And it's really neat. So my parents, as you look outside of their like master bedroom, you have their front yard and then you have the really pretty view of the mountains. And one time, I don't know what my little brother and my mom were talking about. I wasn't there. This is a story that my brother told me, and he's like, Mom told me a story she told me she had a dream the other day, and it was a little boy, and he was playing in their front yard, and there was like yellow roses, like a garden full of yellow roses around him, and he was just walking around kind of like touching them. And he was eating, and he says he looked up and he's like, Mom. And she's like, what? Because she was just telling him how like beautiful of a dream it was. She's like, Mom, that's Santi. And she's like, what? She's like, yeah, yellow is his color. Like he knew, but my mom didn't know that yellow was his color. And she looked at Ivan and she's like, she's pregnant, or she's going to be pregnant. And then a couple weeks later, I found out I was pregnant.
Oh, that just gave me chills.
Yeah,
all over my body.
Yeah, so there's many times where I have seen him in my dreams. I just don't know what he looks like, but I know it's him because I can feel it. So it's really cool. But there's so many ways that he manifests himself. Like when it's raining every year on his birthday, and all of a sudden the sky clears up so we can release balloons, and it's really fun.
What are some what are some of the best ways that like friends and family can support people that or women that go through a loss of a child or like infertility even?
And everybody copes with it a little bit different. For me, it was, I just sometimes needed somebody to be there because I didn't want to be alone. Not necessarily to talk about it, but somebody to just be there with me physically and just kind of like almost sometimes keep me distracted, because if I would be done doing whatever I needed to do for the day, I would just sit there and just kind of like dwell on it. But also give people the space to mourn, because you do mourn a loss. So just love them. Like that's the best advice I could give, is check on people, but also give them their space. Does that make sense at all?
Like, and that's the hard part, because like when I like spotted, I immediately I was like, cause like after you telling me your story, I was like,
I could tell.
I was like, oh my gosh, like this is happening. Like I need to prepare myself, like prepare myself for the worst. Like I'm going in on Monday, but like I just need to prepare myself. But I also did, like once I had like gotten to that like acceptance part, like this is happening. This is happening. When I go in, they're gonna tell me that like there's no heartbeat. Like I just have to be okay with it. Like I have to get to that point.
And I could tell through your text messages that you were already shutting down.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm sorry I snapped at you.
That's okay. That's okay.
But I'm that type of person where it's like,
I need a minute.
Well, not even like a minute. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to think about it. If I think about it, I'm going to spiral. I spiral real fast. And so I was like, okay, I just need to distract myself with everything and anything else. I can't, like, because so like the people that I had told that I was like, okay, like I'm spotting, because like when I told my mom, she's like, oh, it might be normal, like that happened with your sister, you know, and like everything was fine.
I think in
But
my best friend mind, I was like, I need to keep her calm. I need to tell her that it is normal, because it is normal to spot during the first trimester.
Because they told me that it's 25% of women just spot, and it's like totally fine. Like 20 to 25.
Yeah.
But at that time, I was like, I don't want anybody to remind me that like I'm supposed to be being like scared. You know, I was like, I want everybody to just like act like nothing.
And that's why I was like, you're gonna be fine. But I did check on you probably more than I was supposed to. But I felt like, because that's what I was missing, and that's what I needed, that's what I was supposed to do for you. But at the same time, like I said, everybody deals with things so differently. So the best thing you can do is just check on your friends and make sure that they know that you are there for them regardless of what they're going to need. Like, I'm here for you anytime. Just say jump and I'll jump, you know. It's like, just know that I am here. I think that that's the biggest piece of advice, is to make sure that they know that you are there for them regardless of what they need. Because that was also sometimes in my head, that I was like, oh, well, they're working, or I'm going to bug them.
That's what you told me, and I was like, don't ever, you can call me, like, don't ever, because I was super busy with work at that time, I'm literally working until like 1, 2 a.m.
Yeah.
And so like, now I can understand that, but at the time I was like, why would you think that? Why would you think that you'd be a burden to me? What, you know? But would it be beneficial to ask, like, how can I help you?
Yes, 100%.
Okay.
Because everybody's reaction is going to be different. You're not gonna deal with it the way I dealt with it. So yeah, just ask how you can help, and just make sure that they know that you are there to help for whatever they need. I was actually really, really sad when you told me that. I was like, okay, I need to stay positive, because in her mind, it's done. You know, like,
I'm very much that way, where I'm like, okay, like, let me look at like what's gonna happen. Like, I researched everything, like, what's the next step?
I
like,
knew that you had, because that's what you do. And
well,
I'm
like,
you're scaring yourself.
I had remembered a lot from like when I did that, when you had your experience. And so I was like, okay, like she started spotting. That was like the first thing. So like, what next? Like, what do I have to look for next? And like, you know, I ended up being fine, but like by the grace of God. But I was like, I
felt like you were
accepted it. You know, I was like, it's happening. Like, 1 in 4 women go through it. I'm one of the 4 now. Like, you know, I had just at that point like accepted it, because I knew if I like there was like a little part of me that was like keeping the hope, but I was like, I would rather be
ready.
Like I'd rather be prepared for them to tell me bad news, and surprised and excited if they tell me like good news, instead of hoping and just being like let down. You know?
See, and that's where I was in such denial, that I was like, what else can you do to tell me that this child's heartbeat is still there? You know, like, what else? So yeah, just ask.
It's so crazy how like different people like cope
with things,
trauma like that. You know?
Yeah, and that's what I don't think a lot of people understand, that it's not just like, oh, she had a miscarriage, she can have another one. That was a really hard thing for me to hear. Like, at least you can have another baby. No, I can't actually.
I can't have that one.
I can't have that one. And I can't have more babies than Eli. Like, that is my baby. You know, and that's my last chance I get to have to birth my own baby and to have a baby, you know. So it's not like, that's just the wrong choice of words to use for somebody who has.
I think that is really like, people that haven't gone through it need to choose their words wisely.
I feel like there's need to be like an etiquette book for pregnant women, for people who've lost a child.
Like
we just need to be careful. You know. And I know that
try
people
to think about what you're saying before you say
and
it.
some people would be like, well, that's just like people are too sensitive. Well, it's kind of a sensitive subject. It's not just something that yeah.
Like some people, like that might roll off their shoulders if they have like really tough skin, but to other people that can, send them over the edge where they just start crying because it was just, you didn't mean it that way, but because it was presented that way, it was harsh,
Yeah. But that was the story of
Thank you for sharing
my
that.
baby. Yeah,
I think that's going to help a lot of people, I feel like a lot of people are going to be able to relate to a lot of things you said.
Yeah.
And, it's just, we just got to support each other, especially through those hard times that, because even when you've never experienced it, you can be empathetic.
Yeah. I think as a woman in general, you can be, but after you have a child and you see a mom go through something like that, and especially, yes, you should check on every mom that has an experience like that, but we really, really need to check on our moms that already have little ones at home because,
they don't get the chance to like just sit and like mourn. They have other people to take care of.
Yeah, they have little humans that need their attention,
and oftentimes moms put themselves on the back burner and don't deal with those feelings and stuff because
they're too busy.
The mom guilt will set in and like, hey, like I
don't have time.
Yeah.
I don't have time for this. I remember when I got divorced, my mom was like, 1 tear, you get 1 tear. But this was the time where she was like, cry all you want and cry all you need, kick, scream, whatever you got to do, but you have to like deal with it. Because in the beginning I was like, I'm not going to tell anybody, I'm just not going to talk about it. But I felt like the more I talked about it and the more like I would share my story with other people, more people would relate to it and
share their
like,
story with
oh,
you.
I've been through it too. And then again, they would open up and share their story with me. So it's important to be able to talk about this. And again, like talking about, breaking those generational curses in the Latino community, this has to be something that needs to be talked about.
Yeah.
I don't know how it is in other cultures, but I know that a lot of cultures are like the Latino culture, the Mexican culture, where we just don't talk about hard things like this. And it needs to be talked about. Like I think that my whole family knew that we had lost a baby because I told everybody during a Christmas dinner. And then my cousins started telling me like, oh, well, I lost a baby too. I'm like, where was all of this before? Like, why didn't you guys like talk about it? So it needs to not be a taboo subject. It needs to be said.
Well, I think that kind of concludes the episode. So if you guys have any words of advice on how either you dealt with miscarriage or infertility, anything like that, please send those in so we can share with our listeners as well.
I do want to share one last thing really quickly. Something that I think finally put my heart at ease and kind of more than anything helped me move forward and to be able to like pick up again like my daily life because I was struggling for a really long time and I talked about it, but I would never cry about it. I did cry about it, but not when I would like talk about it to other people. I would cry in private by myself. But I wrote him a letter. Letting him know that how much he's loved.
Stop it, or when we cry, keep going. Sorry, keep going.
Sorry. How much he's loved and how much he was wanted in our family. And in that letter, I remember saying that you are the big brother and you are in charge of sending your brothers to earth to us. So it was really cool to be able to like just pour my heart out into this letter. And I don't exactly remember it word by word, but there were so many things that I wish I could have told him that I wrote it out. And it was such a healing process for me, and it was such an incredible cleanse for myself and my soul and my heart that I needed to do that. So that was something that really helped me. So if there's something that I can tell you that can possibly help you, would be writing a letter to your baby. So
that will do it.
Yeah.
I try to hold in these tears right now.
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. I'm just a ball baby. It's fine. Whew, okay. Well, sorry.
No.
I lost it at the very end. I held it together pretty good.
You did pretty good.
The whole time.
I cried the first half, so it's your turn.
Yeah, so if you guys have any experiences like that or anything that helped you, please share those with us, as they might be healing to other women as well.
Just know that you are loved.
Yeah.
Regardless, whether you have physical children or not,
you're
still a mom, and you matter, and the world is a better place because you are in it.
Yeah.
So,
well,
that was a little heavy.
Yeah, that was a little heavy. Next week we will pick up on some other topics. I think we're going to talk about more like our pregnancies and like kind of what stories. I think that's next week.
Is it?
I think we're going to talk
giving
about
it away.
Pregnancy. That's all right. Let them know what's coming. Let them know what's coming. Sorry, but we're going to talk about like our pregnancies, what we did and didn't like, because pregnancy was so freaking hard for me. It was rough.
You know what? I think that man up there gave me an easy pregnancy because I had gone through it.
Oh, yeah.
So
you deserved an easy pregnancy at that point, man. You earned it.
I can't complain about it.
But yeah, so we're going to kind of talk a little bit more about our pregnancies and stuff like that. But yeah, like we said, every week, please just kind of interact with us on our Instagram and Facebook. That's where we'll be posting different quotes, questions for you guys to interact with. Yeah, bloopers from the next episode, which are always fun because we make a fool of ourselves for the first 30 minutes. But yeah, thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you guys next week.
And thank you for coming along this journey with us, because there is no hood like motherhood. Till next time, guys.
See you later, mamas.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope you leave this episode and every episode feeling the love and support of this awesome community of mamas. We also want to remind all you mamas that there is no better mama for your baby than you. You are exactly what they need. Only a good mom worries about whether they are being a good mom. And most importantly, the world is a better place with you in it. Tune in every Monday for a new episode, and don't forget to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at motherhood.aif. We are so excited to have you with us on this journey as we all navigate the toughest hood we'll ever go through, motherhood. We'll see you back here next week, mamas. We out.